that's going to burn.
Yeah.
All right. So mics are hot, guys.
Hot mic.
Hot mic.
Welcome to the first ever third podcast that we've recorded
I'm looking forward to seeing how you edit that around that one.
for Ride More Talk Less. We were lucky enough to get the all-knowing, ever-present Adam Aleksy here for an interview. So we're going to sit down with him. He's going to talk about all things Oregon Run, Run to the Rock, Ride More Talk Less, and beyond.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Himself.
Yeah, if you're listening to this podcast and you don't know who this man is, I don't know why you're listening to this podcast, but welcome.
Why the fuck would you even be here? As always.
Maybe they just like motorcycles, Seth. Maybe they just like motorcycles.
I'm gay for motorcycles.
If you've been following our first episode previously, when you go back and check out the other episodes, right, like professionals, we're recording out of order and posting later. So if this is your first episode or you listen to the other ones first, either way, we do a little game here where you get to guess exactly how many whiskey drinks we've had during the course of the show. And right now, we all have 1 ounce of 92 proof whiskey in front of us. This is Smooth Ambler Contradiction this week. Powered by Ride More Talk Less. So, Adam, welcome to the show, man. It's good to finally get you here.
It's good to finally be here.
For those of the listeners out there that don't know who you are yet, or maybe not have a full clue, why don't you give us a little rundown of what it is that you do?
I guess am the originator of the Oregon Run, Ride More Talk Less industry events, etc. This was all one giant great idea in my head at one point, and through a series of bad decisions, I decided to make it a reality.
So you mentioned Oregon Run, which I think everybody knows about. I don't think that a lot of people out there know exactly what Ride More Talk Less is yet.
Right. So Ride More Talk Less Industries has taken a few forms, but it's a name that we've latched onto and have stayed in love with. And Ride More Talk Less Industries is basically the events company that everything is umbrellaed under. So Oregon Run, Run to the Rock, any other different types of events we want to do, et cetera, et cetera. But it's basically the parent company. It's a parent company. It's what all the money goes through and comes out of.
Okay, great. So if people are looking for new things to do, and then they shouldn't just pay attention to like the Oregon Run Instagram, maybe it'd be better for them to maybe...
Right. So this year we'll be rolling out the Ride More Talk Less Industries website. We'll be rolling out the Instagram account in its entirety for the first time really this year. And so you'll be able to get information on currently what we have, the 2 events, and it will also be the first place where you'll find out about anything new we are working on. And we do have a lot planned and in the works, as you know, so it's definitely going to be an account worth following over the next couple of years.
Nice. And off the top of your head, do you remember what the links are for the Ride More Talk Less website and the Instagram?
Yeah, so Ride More Talk Less Industries, the website is rmtlindustries.com, and the Instagram should be at rmtl industries.
Awesome. So, as normal, we usually like to talk about how people got started riding motorcycles. It's usually where I like to start. Why don't you give us a little rundown on your first bike, how that all came about, or how the spark started for you?
Sure. I feel like I've told this story a lot lately. So it actually
so I won't force you to tell it again. If you don't,
no, it's
if
fine.
you're not in the mood, you can just refer them over to somebody else's podcast where you took the time.
If you'd like to, you can.
God forbid you waste your time doing it on our podcast.
Yeah, fuck us, right?
No, yeah, you can listen to this story on American Roadrunner podcast by our friend Bob Marshall, who was actually the first podcast I ever recorded for after this last year's Oregon Run. I believe I touch on it a little bit on Girl on a Moto podcast as well. So those are the places you can go to fact check what I am about to tell you, and make sure I'm keeping my story straight. I was not drinking during those, so it's maybe a little more accurate. But no, I actually got into motorcycling really late. I was 20. When did I meet Jess? So I was probably about 24, 23 at the time.
Shit, if that's late, I'm ancient.
I never grew up around motorcycles. I'd see motorcycles as a kid. They kind of stoked me out, but it was just never around me. It was never like a constant presence in my life by any means. And one day my dad started getting really obsessed with American Chopper on Discovery Channel. Like oddly obsessed. So my dad will watch reruns of Seinfeld and Cheers or whatever his favorite shows are, but those have all been long gone. And he was literally watching a new episode the day it came out, and then watching the rerun of that episode like 3 or 4 more times in the week, which was weird for him. And one day, it was just him and my mom at home, and he made a comment to her like, I've always wanted to do that. And my mom was doing work, and she looked up and was like, you want to build a motorcycle? And he was like, no, ride. I've always wanted to ride a motorcycle. Since I was a kid, I've always wanted a Harley Davidson. And at that point, they'd been married 25 years, and my mom had no clue. And so we enrolled him in a motorcycle safety course, and then my mom was looking at the schedule, and it was basically like, Happy Father's Day, go spend 4 days by yourself in a classroom. And in Illinois, sorry for you Oregonians, but in Illinois, the class is only $20 to take the motorcycle safety course.
Fuck me.
Right? The way it should be.
Yeah.
I fucking wish. It's like $200 here, isn't it?
$250, I think.
I don't know if it's gone up. I took it, my course, 7 years ago now, was $185.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's $250 now.
Shit.
Anyway, so you got to learn, or your dad got to learn on the cheap at least.
Well, yeah, kind of. So I told my mom since it was only $20, I'd be more than happy to go with him. I mean, at the time, I had taught myself how to drive stick shift, like with friends in their cars, and it just seemed like, I don't know. At the time, I wasn't super mechanically inclined, but I was interested in being mechanically inclined, and I had this idea in my head that the more forms of transportation I knew how to drive, the better off I would be. I don't know if I'm maybe zombie apocalypse style, but anyways. So I was interested in just learning to drive something else and keeping him company. And then we got enrolled in the last class of the year in October, and then he had a business meeting out of town come up for that weekend that he couldn't miss or rearrange. So we ended up having to miss the class, so we enrolled at the Harley dealership in the area because they were just starting the Rider's Edge program. So it ended up costing us about $200 a piece because it's more expensive through them, but it also guaranteed us spots in the very first class the next season.
Whoa, wait. Things are more expensive through Harley?
Yeah, I know. It's hard to believe, right?
That's not a thing.
I have never paid $30 for a bolt at a Harley dealership. So... yeah, so we went through the dealership, and the very first, I think it was May, we definitely got rained on a little bit one day, but not much. And then I do remember the next class the next weekend got fucking dumped on, like their entire time out on the course. I mean, they would come in from lunch breaks and just drown rats. It was crazy. And so, so we took the course, and I really enjoyed it, and we bought 883 Custom Sportster, and so we shared that for a while, and we would be like racing each other home after work. We worked about equidistance from our own house, and the rule was first one to get a leg over the machine got first ride. And since we were getting off around 5, first leg over the machine was about 5:15, and generally the first rider would come home around 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night. So I spent most of my very beginning of my riding career riding in the dark around town just to get some hours in and some time in. And then shortly after that, we went to a demo day, and we rode bigger Harleys, Softail and a Road King. I loved the Softail. My dad loved the Road King. He had money. I had none. So he decided our next bike would be a Road King. We were supposed to trade the Sportster in, but the day the Road King got delivered, I came home to find the Sportster still there, and him and my mother had done the math and realized for what little, like what the trade in on the Sportster, like how little it would take off a monthly payment wasn't worth the fact that half the time he got home I would be on the bike first. So yeah, and that was it. Then we would get home every day after work and we would ride together, and we'd be gone till 10 or 11 o'clock, and then Saturdays, Sundays would come around and we'd jump on the bikes. We'd be gone all day. And then my mom realized she wasn't seeing us anymore, so she jumped on the back of my dad's bike, and yeah, that's how it was. So eventually I traded in the Sportster on a Softail, Heritage Springer, which I still have. I will continue to have it, hand it down to my daughter, but so for 2 or 3 years, my only riding partner, honestly, was my dad, which was rad. We rebuilt our whole relationship around motorcycles. We didn't have the best relationship before that, but having a common point of interest to talk about let us kind of rebuild that whole relationship. So
That's a way cooler story than mine, man. I'm kind of jealous.
yeah, that's why I have a tattoo on my inner left wrist that says that's the bar and shield that says "Saved by Motorcycles" inside of it, because I was also going through some shit mentally and stuff, and I honestly believe without motorcycles there would be a good chance maybe I wouldn't be here. So yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I hear a lot. People with depression moving towards motorcycles accidentally.
Yeah.
I had kind of a similar experience. I was in a dark spot when I started riding, and I think I started riding motorcycles as a way out. I really didn't want to be here anymore, and I thought it'd be a fast way to check out. But I wound up loving it, and instead of crashing and killing myself, I crashed and bought another motorcycle.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's hard to think about anything else when you're on the bike other than being on the bike, and it's hard to be in a bad fucking mood and dwell on the shitty stuff when the world's whizzing by you and smelling delicious and looking fantastic and the adrenaline's pumping. And
yeah, there's not a lot of things in this world that are just pure fun. Yeah. And I mean, some people may not be mechanically inclined, but even the little bit that you can do, whether it's maintaining the bike, riding the bike, talking to people about motorcycles, every aspect of it has a high level of enjoyment, which is really rare to find in the world.
Yeah, like Tobacco Motorwear just dropped a new commercial. It's like, life got you down, or you staring into the infinite abyss, like all these like great millennial talking points about how pointless life is, and it's like, buy a fucking motorcycle. And it's so true.
My favorite part of that is when they're like, from the universe that brought you tacos and sex.
Yeah, exactly.
Now motorcycles.
Yeah.
It's fucking just so good.
Or at the end when they're like, are you suffering from like any types of depression or lulls or blah, blah, blah. Maybe you should ask your doctor if a motorcycle is right for you. Or don't, because it's your own fucking opinion.
It's really well done. I think that's one of the best commercials I've seen in a long time. And it's kind of cool because they're not pushing their product. They're just pushing riding motorcycles in general.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. I'm going to have to look it up.
Oh, yeah, we'll watch it on the break.
Sounds good.
We'll
Well,
hit
what
that
are we going
before.
to do?
We'll do RCR too, but
Okay.
it's only like a commercial. So
All right.
Yeah, and also, it's just like, I personally believe, for a number of reasons, but I think it would be stupid rad if the tiered licensing system was like, all right, when you're 15, you get a riding permit and take the motorcycle safety course. When you're 16, you get your first license. You can only ride a motorcycle under 500 cc's, and then after 2 years, you can get a bigger bike. But I think about that, everybody being exposed to it, normalizing it as a mode of transportation, I think it would also improve driving in general, because everybody would be terrified they were about to take out a kid every time they start actually watching for motorcycles and giving them proper space and understanding like how much we can lower congestion, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's a pie in the sky idea, but I have a feeling there's a good portion of those kids who wouldn't switch back to a car for a very long time in more temperate climates. So
yeah,
I do.
And I you're not the first person to bring that up. I mean, we mentioned that we've done this out of order, but John Gardner, when he was here, he mentioned something very similar to Seth. When we did his interview, he was on the same page.
I've been an advocate of the tiered licensing system for a long time.
yeah.
I wish it was attached to speed limits too, though.
Right?
Yeah, like, oh, gee, you're a Class A license, so that means that you can do 95 on I-5 instead of 65.
Right.
It'd be fucking great.
Yeah. But you're only a Class D regular license, so you got to do 40.
Right?
That sounds terrible unless you're gonna like regulate people to whatever lane. You're like, you can only do 40 and you have to be in the slow lane.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And
We
it
just
should
need
be
to
on your
build new
license plate.
freeways. We build new freeways for people who don't know how to ride
Color code them.
/ drive, and you have to stay on the idiot freeway. And the rest of us who know how to operate our vehicles can take The Autobahn.
Sustain
The Uberbahn. The ultimate.
Yes, the Uberbahn.
So we got your riding history out of the way. You want to chat about what brought about the Oregon run, or do you want to save that for when we're answering the Instagram questions?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess we can start kind of mixing those in. So we did a post leading up to this on the Instagram. Ask us anything you want, and people literally ask anything, but I knew that was coming when Jess phrased it that way. Jess is my wife, and she does all of the marketing for us, so she's the one running all of our social accounts, making sure our websites are dialed, etc. So we got to ask everything from where do babies come from.
That was my favorite.
Yeah, right? Your mother.
The fuck do I know, man?
Your mother. That's where babies come
When
from.
two mommies love each other very much, they go to a clinic and look through a Facebook and decide which jizz they would like.
Exactly. So one of the questions, of course, is, and it comes up, is how did the run all begin? How did this whole Ride More Talk Less Industries thing really begin? And that it's to pinpoint the exact moment of origin. I mean, if we're gonna wax nostalgically about this, is a bit hard to pinpoint. I do know the seeds were first planted in the form of reading an article about the very first El Diablo run that Bitwell put on in Baja, Mexico. Just the idea of like 25 people on choppers just riding around Mexico in order to eat tacos and drink tequila sounded like the greatest fucking idea I had ever heard of. And then very shortly I read about the Gypsy Run on the East Coast, which was a ride all day to a campsite, party all night, ride all day back. Also seemed like a really great fucking idea. And then when we moved out west to Portland, I was able to ride my bike the whole way. So spending 5-6 days alone on the road was fucking amazing. And I remember thinking, like, how do I just do this forever? So that, I think those two things together kind of solidified the idea in my head as just like a goof of a gypsy style run at some point down the road. It would be really great to have an event that literally ride all day, party all night, then do it again, and then do it again, as long as we possibly could. Just seemed like that's the way maybe life should be. So that was kind of where the whole idea came into play. I also noticed after living in Oregon that going to different events, the people I actually spent time with on the road were usually the people I would like actually hang out with afterwards, go for more rides with, etc. And we would get really close because we were actually sharing time on the road as opposed to time at a campsite, which kind of reinforced that idea of an event that was mostly riding. And then I guess the way it really came about, I had started a small patch company with a friend, and Ride More Talk Less was like the first patch idea we had. It was in the first run. It sold out immediately. Bitwell saw it randomly and like reposted it on Instagram, which just basically meant we sold out in like a week, which was awesome. And so that's kind of where the business started coming into play, Ride More Talk Less Industry. And so we had this financial entity that could handle doing an event. And then my daughter was born, and very much instinctually I wanted to do something more with my life, something she could be proud of down the line, something that would build a stronger community, because I grew up in suburbs, and as much as they're shitty about those, as little kids they're amazing because they're safer to like ride your bike and go on adventures. And back in the 80s growing up in early 90s, it was like whoever's parents were actually around, they did the parenting. So like my parents would both be off at work this day, and we were old enough to stay home by ourselves, but they knew like my friend's mom across the street was home all day, so she would come out and check on us. And she was more strict than my parents, and my parents were more strict than so-and-so's parents. But whoever parent was like the one kind of around for the day, watching out for the kids, you know, they were the ones who called the shots and got you in trouble or not or whatever. And I remember realizing at the time how much freedom we had as little kids to just be out on our own and outside all summer long, but also like learn to negotiate different parenting styles, etc. And I look back on that now and think about like, and everybody was friends, and we, they would all come home from work, and we'd end up in one garage or another, hanging like they'd hang out and catch up on the day, and like while we kept playing and stuff, and so and then my family was a big Italian family, so we were always getting together. So I was always surrounded by communities, and I loved that growing up. As I got more and more separated from that, moving away from family, middle and nowhere Illinois, etc. Then it's like your group of friends that keep you alive, keep you going, and so community's always played a big part in my life, and I've always wanted a good, solid community. And living in a city, sometimes that's harder to do, and I knew I wanted that for Sophia. I wanted her to know that whichever uncle was around was in charge, and maybe Uncle Seth and Uncle Adam are a little bit more lenient than, say, Uncle Fox, or, and so she could negotiate that. And
she's
just
going to have to learn how to make good decisions if she's going to hang out with Uncle Adam, because
Right.
Uncle Adam instigates bad shit.
Yeah, especially if Uncle Adam is Uncle Whiskey Adam at the moment. So
It is Sunday.
Yeah, the motorcycle keys are right there, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. You know how to kick that thing over, right?
Come on, take it for a rip.
Yeah, remember, helmet and gloves.
Hey, so show me where all of Daddy's hidden switches are on the Yamaha chopper. I want to take it for a ride. So so she was born. I wanted to do more. Wanted to build a community, and honestly, it was right after Dream Roll. I think it was Dream Roll at 1 or 2, and it was the week after, and there was maybe 40 ladies who met up at CC to go for a ride together, and they had talked about it at Dream Roll, and then someone followed up, a couple people followed up and actually sent out an email, and the very next weekend they had 40 people show up to go for a ride. And it just kind of clicked in my head that if they could get 40 people to show up for a day ride just a week later through a couple of emails, there was probably no real reason we couldn't do an event and get people to show up and pay a ticket price. And I met a few people in the industry, so I knew I could probably, we had the connection with Bitwell, so I knew we could probably get together a few raffle prizes and make it kind of dope. And so I basically told Jess, like, I think I want to do this, and why she said yes, I have no idea, but she was like, yeah, try it, go for it. And so that was really where it all started. So we had to get the word out. I very quickly realized, because weed went legal, and the OLCC had it, there might be a chance for us to get a weed sponsor legally, and be like, that would be rad. Because it's all about freedom and self-expression. Like, you don't gotta smoke. I'm not a big weed smoker ever. I don't really smoke weed now at all. But the idea that it was there and available for free and totally okay and destigmatized, really appealed to me. And had a friend who actually worked for a big distillation company that was switching into flower, so they ended up sponsoring first year and riding out and driving one of the trucks and just handing out joints left and right. And the first year I had a connection with Montucky Cold Snacks through the Patch Company, and they came out in force and donated a bunch of beer for us, and we ended up putting together a hell of a good raffle. And so we had to get the word out, and so we went to the one show with the weed company, and they were running a promo at the time, which you can't legally do anymore, but if you signed up for they were allowed to give out free samples. So if you signed up for their mailing list, they gave you half a gram of bud, and we were sharing a booth with them. So word got out at the one show real fucking fast that if you found this booth, they would give you fucking free weed in return for an email address. So the next thing you know, we had 1,500 people coming by our booth to grab weed. And then, of course, while they were there, they were looking at the map and asking questions about, the run, etc. And that was February, as always. And by the end of March, we had sold through the initial offering of tickets, 60 tickets, people taking a total fucking wild risk on us, assuming we would know what to do enough. So yeah, that's basically how it all got started.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, I was in the complete opposite situation as you. I was around motorcycles from the time that I was born. I started going on motorcycle rallies and going to motorcycle events when I was 12, 13 years old. I've been to Sturgis in the mid 90s, all of that stuff. And I remember, you and I were loosely associated. We were friends at CC at the time when you were developing the first year of the Oregon run. And I remember sitting down and talking with you about it, and when you were in the planning stages, and just thinking, oh, this guy fucking knows. He knows what we want to do. It sounded like the type of thing that I wanted in my life, that I had been missing from motorcycles from the very beginning. Because you go on a regular run and you show up at camp, and 90% of the people are there to drink, not ride their motorcycles. So you just watch these people just sit there and get shit-faced drunk for 4 days, and they roll in, they roll out, and sure, it's fun. It's a party, but that's what it is. You're going to a party. You're not going to a motorcycle event.
Right, and you can do that at home.
And then the other thing that I noticed was, so I didn't get to go to the first year. Bought a ticket. The Harley Davidson motorcycle establishment that I worked at told me that they would fire me if I went, because it was July. So I didn't get to go on the first year. And then the second year, the free beer, the free weed, and the free food was the biggest thing that I noticed was in community building. That was huge, because when somebody walked over to where my tent was, they had a joint in their pocket, they had a beer in their hand, and they had a plate of food. They weren't there to do anything except for talk. Like, they just wanted to know who I was, what was going on with my bike. Whereas at other events that I go to, if somebody comes wandering into your camp, it's because they want to hit your cooler. You got a fifth of whiskey sitting on the bench. Like, they want to take a shot off your bottle, and then they do that, and then they wander to the next camp, and they do the same thing. They grab a beer, and they wander to the next camp, and they do the same thing. But you don't get that feeling on the Oregon Run. Like, if somebody's coming up to talk to you, it's because they want to talk to you. And you get to know everybody because of that. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, I really think so the first year was a little bit segregated. People, had their camps with their friends, and it was the first year and nobody knew what to expect, and we didn't know what to expect. And so we realized, I changed some things up for year 2, grabbing people together for a talk at camp, putting them all in the same space, one campfire, not several around, just trying to get people together, which on year 2 was this beautiful, magical moment of seeing that on night 2, looking around and being like, dude, everybody already knows everybody.
That was Yahat's, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that was on your team.
In a cow filled pasture, which to me is still one of my favorite spots we have ever camped, because
with not enough chili, because people don't understand firsts for everyone before seconds.
Yeah, and that catering company didn't know not to screw us. So, but anyways, to digress. Yeah, so I think it is that combination. We provide so much so life at camp is easy, because we expect you to put a bunch of miles in, and people do. And then, yeah, it's like, sure, someone's going to run out of cigarettes and want to bum a cigarette from you. But then when you run out of cigarettes, someone's going to happily bum a cigarette to you. Like, and I think especially in that second year, everybody, and maybe it's a different generation too of riders, because we're all maybe struggling a little bit more economically than the generation ahead of us did. But it's like, if someone's got a pocket full of, mushrooms or a bottle of whiskey they picked up or whatever, and they're having a real good time with it, they're real apt to share it, because they want everybody else to have a good time. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the vibe I get, is like,
or wandering around offering pulls off your bottle of Mad Dog.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think it is that combination. We provide so much, so people just bring extras, and then are very happy to share those extras till they run out.
Yeah, it's a great vibe. I mean, I don't have other events and rallies to compare it to, because I've never been on another one.
Okay.
But I don't know that I need to. I feel like a lot of those places, those other events and things are old school, or have an old school vibe, or are well established and have been around for years or decades. And I really appreciate the level of involvement that I've been able to come to have with the Oregon Run, Run to the Rock, Ride More, Talk Less, because of it being so young. Both the people who are running it and the vision that they have, and like the events themselves not being super well established.
Right, and by no means are Jess and I spring chickens, or now the rest of the staff and volunteers spring chickens at all. I mean, even our volunteers, one of our volunteers this year is well into his 60s, Mike. But
yeah.
Mike remembers the 60s, and he remembers that openness and that, like, everybody love everybody kind of vibe, and picked up on that right away with us. and like it's that vibe we're keeping alive, which honestly I think leads us into another great Instagram question we had, if you don't mind, Adam.
No, go ahead, please.
Which was, is this ride open to noobs? Which is exactly how it was phrased. And
do you remember who that was?
yeah, I think you have the note.
Yeah, I got the note. Go ahead and get started on it. I'll pull it up here.
Okay.
It's right here. Is it noob friendly? That's from @iSerafina on
That's
Instagram.
So that is a very complicated question. It doesn't sound like it. As far as the event at camp and the event itself, absolutely. It is friendly to everybody. The 2 rules for Oregon Run, for all of you listening who've heard about it, have never been, have tried to go, who thought about maybe wanting to go, etc. The 2 rules you'll find listed out on the website that are the most important are, first of all, you have to be willing to ride the miles. And second, you have to be down to have a good time. And that means open-minded, non-judgmental. We're all there to get weird in our own ways. And that needs to be, like, if you're cool with that, and you're cool with the riding, this event is more than open to you. And you will find, especially now, we saw it this year in the best possible way. It was like at registration, it's like, oh, I don't recognize your face. Is this your first run? They're like, yeah. They're like, oh, here, let me show you how to do this. This is how registration goes. And like, find a little group and they'll do this. And then they get to camp and they'll be like, oh man, food's over here. Let me show you how this works. Let me show you how that works. Like, people like seeing new faces, and they want, again, it's one of those things, like, they have such a great time on the run that they want to make sure anybody new has the same great time on the run. It's just, that's the community we've built.
Yeah, I mean, year 3, the desert run.
Breakdown Run 2018.
Yeah. Your wife, Jess, came up to me and was like, hey, I need to introduce you to this guy. He's new. He rode before, but he just started riding again. And he doesn't really know anybody. He's not super confident in his skills, etc., etc. Plethora of excuses why it was important for me to meet this guy. And that is how I met Zeb, who hopefully I'm putting out I'd love to have him on here at some point.
Yeah, I've got him on the schedule.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's how I met Zeb, and I was more than happy to pull myself back a little bit from my own style of riding and pace with the guy David Valdez that I ride with on a regular basis, to bring Zeb into the fold, to support him, to make sure he was on a pace that was comfortable for him, with people who knew what they were doing, to have him feel welcome and feel comfortable and have a good time. And it's just one of those things. I would happily do that any year for any new rider who hasn't been on the Oregon Run before or doesn't have a lot of miles in the seat. I think that this is a fantastically noob-friendly event.
So I'd like to kind of step in here, because
please.
my role with Oregon Run and Ride More Talk Less Industries, among many hats that I wear, planning the routes is a big part of what I do. And I try to make sure that there's one route that is just pretty much miles. It's not entirely the most technical route. It's still going to be fun. You're still going to be seeing some great stuff. So if you're a new rider and you're looking at the Oregon Run as being your first like kind of motorcycle event that you're going to dip your toe into, I would suggest just pay attention to the maps and just make sure that you can comfortably ride that number of miles a day. If you're at the point where you can run through an entire tank of gas and then stop and take a break, and then get back on your bike and burn another, half a tank, you're more than well enough good to make it from camp to camp, I think. Because we have routes that are designed for riders that aren't extremely technical routes. We also have routes that are extremely technical. They're very difficult, and there are a lot of miles. There are a lot of hairpin turns. There's not worn down signs. But there's always a route for that rider that's a more comfortable, more direct route. So pay attention to your own personal experience, how many miles you're comfortable riding in a day, and plan on, if you can do 300 miles in a day, you're more than capable of making it from camp to camp.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's why it's a complicated question because at camp you're good.
You're gonna have
Golden
a fucking
is in
blast.
there. Yeah.
Although I will say that if Oregon Run is your first introduction to motorcycle events, everything in the world is gonna pale in comparison to that. So it's gonna kind of ruin you a
not
little
to
bit.
not to pat ourselves on the back or anything.
I mean, it's like when I went to the Portland Auto Show years ago. I walked in, first car that was there that was open to sit in. I hopped in and I sat down. It was a Jaguar, like an $87,000 Jaguar. And then
It's
every
a Jag.
other car that I sat in the rest of that day felt like a total piece of shit.
Right. Yeah.
And that's
you
what
don't start with the
don't-
you don't start with the Bentleys and the whatever. Yeah.
Don't start with the Oregon Run. Go to Dirt Quake.
But that's the thing. Like that's why it's a complicated question because the riding can be difficult. We're trying to take that into account after the breakdown run. I mean, we went way far, and we went way hard, and then we happened to get a nasty fucking heat wave. And it took down far more established riders and made it hard on them and had them dehydrated and a little nervous and panicked, etc. at certain points. It's so after that, we tried to learn some lessons, etc. But yeah, I think Adam's advice is very sound. You need to go to your personal experience. If you're not, and basically what I would say is, if you think you might be there, and you can catch a nice weekend before tickets go on sale, pick a Saturday, pick a round trip of about 300 miles. Be on your bike for 6 hours. Take the whole day with breaks, etc. And then get up on Sunday and see how 100 miles feel. If you have trouble getting through that 100 miles, maybe one more year for Oregon Run. Because that's the thing. Like, you're like, oh, I can totally do 300 miles. But then can you do it again and then again? And I think that's where, with newer riders, you start to see those issues like day 2, day 3, it starts getting really hard because I always find that it takes up till about day 3 for my body to it does this weird thing. Like day 1 is rad. Maybe I'm sore at the end of the day. Day 2, I'm a little bit more sore. Day 3, I stop being sore. And then from there, day 4, day 5, day 6, I can literally add 200 more miles. My body's so used to just being on the bike physically that it stops mattering.
There's definitely an endurance aspect. And I mean, I don't want to go too deep. I mean, we've spent a lot of time on this particular question because it is an important question.
It is a really good one.
But reflecting on our first long rides, the first time I ever took a really long ride on a motorcycle, I literally stopped at every single rest area over that 270-mile ride. The rest areas were 20, 40 miles apart, and I spent 5 minutes at each rest area. I had a drink of water, I had a cigarette, I jumped back on the bike, rode to the next rest area. And I didn't have the endurance built up because, motorcycles are beyond physically enduring. There's a mental endurance that comes with it too, because you're in this hyper-aware state the whole time that you're riding.
Exactly.
So that's a consideration. Take your own personal experience into it, and just try to put some miles down before you make the journey and know where you're at.
Yeah, and if you're not there this year, if you take your little test run and you're like, I'm not there this year, run to the Rock, man.
Run to the Rock is fucking awesome, and you can take 2 days getting there if you have to.
Exactly, and then you can ride as much or as little each day as you want before coming back to camp for the shenanigans. So, which is one of the reasons why we wanted, to do the second event in the first place. Newer riders, maybe older riders who can't put down as many miles as they used to, etc. So, yeah, but thank you for that question. It was a fantastic one.
Yeah, that's a good one to cover, and it's one that I get asked personally a lot, so I'm glad that we kind of addressed it. The next question we have, favorite memories for the Oregon Run? There's so many. That's a hard one to just kind of put a finger on. I'll start it out. It was Breakdown Run 2018. I had made it to Condon, and there was this kid that was lost on his motorcycle. He had this clapped out chopper with a piece of corrugated fucking roofing for a fairing.
No, beat up fucking dirt bike. It wasn't a chopper. That was just like
I thought that was a Sportster.
No, it was or like a big CC dirt. But yeah, Clapped Out was definitely the right.
Yeah, that thing was beat to shit. And I ran into him, and he was all pissed off, and he's like, "Oh, I can't figure out this stupid map on this fucking." All he gave me was this stupid fucking bandana with some turn-by-turn directions on it. And I was like, cool, man, hang out here. We're going to get some gas. We're going to get a drink, and then we're going to hit the road. You can follow us. And so we stopped by Ace Hardware to pick up some earplugs. He got frustrated and ripped off without us, and I watched him go the wrong way towards Fossil instead of following us out to Hefner like we were going to go. And I was like, well, he's going to have a fun ride. That's the long way around, but I know that road, and it's fucking great. And I ran into him again at camp that night. And, we're in the Wallowas, gorgeous mountains in the background, classic big red barn with a huge field behind it. It was just this gorgeous landscape. And he came up to me, and he was like, still pissed off. He's like, oh, I went the wrong way. I got lost, blah, 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 blah. And he just running me the riot act about how bad the event was because we didn't give him, a proper map or whatever.
Side note, so many emails that go out ahead of time with actual Google Maps for you to study, print out, bring along with you. I think that year we even offered the files you could put them in a GPS unit.
No, we offered everything.
The bandana is souvenir-like. It will give you the basics.
Yeah.
Please print your maps out if you need maps.
Yeah, so... But, we had that discussion. He didn't have any social media accounts. He didn't have any way to do turn-by-turn, blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, man, they have gas stations that have maps all along the way. Just, pick up a map and take a look at it and figure out where you're going before you leave. And I was like, this is honestly a really fucking great time. And you got lost for 4.5 hours. You saw the majority of the state of Oregon. You wound up in camp anyway. There's dinner over there, there's beer over there, and there's 150 people here that went on the same ride you did today. Grab a beer, grab some food, go chat with some people, and find a group to ride with tomorrow. And so then we ran into him the next day, and that motherfucker was having the time of his life.
Yeah, I remember.
I remember it clicked for him. It's like, I think it was you that looked at him, and you told him, what was the quote? Like, if you're not having a good time, you're fucking doing it wrong?
Yeah, if you're not having a good time, you're doing it wrong. Stop, figure out what is happening that's wrong, and fix it, man. You're on motorcycles riding around Oregon in good weather. You're going to meet up with a bunch of people for a good party. Like, give me one reason you should not be having a good time.
So that was good, but my favorite part was the next year
when he
running
came
into
back.
that same motherfucker, just elated, can't wait to get back on his bike, can't wait to do it again. Like, he had the best. I think he had the best time out of anybody.
Yeah, it's true. Like, day one, it was one of those, like, all right, I'm going to keep an eye because he's really upset anytime I would possibly run into him. Because as it's different when you're putting the event on, like, all right, like, I want him to have a good time. So I'm probably going to have, like, a million requests or complaints or whatever that I have to field when I get to camp, et cetera, a little mentally preparing for that. And by the end of it, he was like, I had this all wrong on day one. This is great. And then, yes, this year coming back and seeing him at registration at the Jupiter this year, and he was just like, are you motherfuckers ready? Like, he was just like super ambassador, massive cheerleader. Like, this event changed my life last year. Like, yeah, those kind of moments are just like, fuck yes. That's why, like, all the build up, all the planning, all the stress, like, in those moments, it is beyond worth it.
I feel like that kid, out of anybody, like, that event changed the way he looks at motorcycles for the rest of his life.
Yeah, and we should definitely have him on. He would totally come up and do this interview, Brian. Yeah.
We'll Skype him in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Seth, you want to go next? Because I got a bunch.
I mean, I know you do, and mine will be we'll take a peak, a trough, and then a peak again.
Your sweaty balls.
No, my sweaty balls are not a highlight of any of the runs. Although
they're a highlight for me.
The blowout on those jeans that just gave me that flow through air conditioning for the entire weekend. It was beautiful. No, my Oregon run highlight, the one that comes immediately to mind, is not a highlight. Last year, I had the pleasure of, speaking of clapped out piece of shit bikes, I had the pleasure of riding alongside our guest today, Adam Aleksy, on our friend's beat to shit, like a 9901, I don't fucking know, Sportster that was barely roadworthy, but made the entire run. But I got to ride every day from registration to camp night 1, camp night 2, camp night 3 with Adam.
Waiting for me to bleed the brakes, waiting for me to die in the shift linkage, waiting every morning. It was like, I know, Seth, but I know we got to get going, but there's one more thing I can fix on this bike and make it ride a little better.
I know so much more about motorcycles after riding with Adam on that bike. That entire weekend, the whole run, the ride part, the party part, was solid, consistent for what I've come to expect being on Oregon Run. The ride part was phenomenal for me. And I just remember a highlight of that trip was coming in on 34 where it straightens out leading up to I-5, and Adam pulls up right next to me, and we're riding bar to bar, and we're on comms with each other, and I just tell him, like, I don't do this with people. I don't trust other riders, no matter how long I've been riding with you, no matter how well I know you, no matter how much I believe in your skill. I don't ride this way with people. It terrifies the shit out of me, and I am so comfortable and beyond calm sitting next to you on this stretch of road.
Yeah, I remember, because he starts that talk off, and so of course the first thing I do is throttle off a little bit and start dropping back. He's like, no, man, I was trying to get to the point that, like, that for some reason this is not bothering me at all. And I was like, oh, well, in that case, throttle back on and pull back up bar to bar. And we, and it was a wide open, empty road, which is why I felt comfortable doing it. It was a wide fucking lane, and we rode that way as long as we could. And then traffic came, and, you drop off for the safety of everybody. But, yeah, we had, like, a good, probably, 5 miles.
Yeah, thinking about that, thinking about that memory, thinking about the memories, the feelings that it evokes, thinking about that memory, I'm not too much of a man to admit I'm getting a little misty, reminiscing about those days riding with you on the road. It was fantastic.
I had a similar experience here too. Adam and I spent all a year or two together.
Yeah, and I was going to get to that point about. So I have found myself in the unique position, because I'm running camp to camp, and then this year even direct routes, just trying to make the whole thing function while still being on my bike. I've been in the fortunate position to have a different friend with me that I haven't really had any time to get a lot of riding in with. Somehow ends up being like my road partner for most of the weekend or all of the weekend. So the very first year, I was boogieing with some friends and stuff, but then somehow Steve Dewey, Coleman, and I, we fell in on day 2, and we stopped at his mom's house, and I got to meet his mom and see the house he grew up in, which is the coolest hostel ever. His dad has built some. Anyways, I digress. But anyways, so we spent that whole day, and then most of the whole next day, and you have that even without Senna's. There is that communication by the way you ride, and so. That's one of my favorite memories, is every year there's another friend. So then year 2 was Adam, and we had the Sennas, and we just chatted the whole fucking weekend. And probably my favorite moment of that weekend was fucking making a pass, and Adam going, that was fucking shady, dude. No way I'm ever making that pass. And at the time, he's sitting on a motor with literally twice the CCs probably as my bike. Yeah. And I was like, no, man, it was wide open. I had it. And he's like, apparently. But that's the thing. We got to spend 3 days in the saddle next to each other. And then the next year was Fox, and we got 2 whole days together. And... oh, man, and that was the Heppner to Ukiah road.
That was brutal.
That is one of the most unbelievable fucking roads in Oregon. If you have never read the Heppner Ukiah Highway, as soon as the weather is nice, go out and do it. It is fucking amazing.
Is that the one with the canyon?
So it's labeled as the Blue Mountain Scenic Byway.
Yeah. And then we ran into Adam at the top of the crest, and it's you're on basically on a mesa plateau kind of thing, and there's these weird breed of white cows that use that as their open range. So we stopped and lined the bikes up across the highway and got some photos and shit. We had forest rangers come up just to make sure we're doing all right and we're not broken down or whatever. Asked us to move the bikes off the lanes. Fox is totally flirting with the really attractive ranger in the passenger seat, and yeah, it was great.
If you're out there in the Blue Mountains, park alongside the road and wait for that forest ranger to pop up. She's worth chatting with.
That's what I get for riding with Valdez.
And then and then last year was Seth and I, and it's great because we take these little rides and stuff, but to get every year, that's I'm oh, who am I riding with this year? Who am I gonna get? 2 or 3 days with on the road. Like, which one of my really great friends is like, are we going to reach this deeper level of friendship and understanding, etc. So that's always one of my favorite things I look forward to, mostly on the run. And we've ridden a lot of great roads and a lot of great memories there, but campsites, anytime I can look around and see the whole campsite together as a unified community, everybody's laughing and enjoying themselves, no matter race, religion, creed, sexuality, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, those are the moments. So night 2, when I'm looking around and I'm like, this is the most beautiful dysfunctional family reunion I have ever seen. People walking around like fucking vendors at a fucking sports game. Mushrooms, who needs mushrooms? You know, like fucking
that never happens. That's illegal.
Having it was.
No, he's talking about creminis and portobellos.
Yeah, right. People had been foraging, my friends.
We got chanterelles at camp.
But yeah, and then we had Chelsea Daskalos come up, and she was like, so I'm going to ask this question. I just want to make sure before we do it, it's okay with you. My friend really wants to take her top off and ride on the back of my Sportster and throw the rest of the joints out for the night, like candy at a parade. And we just wanted to make sure that would be cool with you and not offensive. And Jess was standing right next to me, and I was like, I like titties. And I look at Jess. Jess is like, I like titties. And we're like, who don't like titties? And shit you not. So we gave him the tub of joints, and shit you not. Like 15 minutes later, we hear a bike fire up. And I'm like, wait. Am I really going to see titties that aren't my wife's? And sure enough, you know, there's Jamie on the back of the bike. Like, fucking, like, but it's great because she's doing, like, the fucking parade wave. Like, it's a real parade, and, like, showering people in fucking joint tubes. And then she even stopped and posed for photographs with people and stuff. And, you know, but it had so come together. Night 3, year 3 on the breakdown run. I mean, night 1. As stressful and crazy as that night was, that site was amazing. You mentioned the red barn with the willowas in the background, but we heard some hooting, and I was talking to the owner, and I was like, you have owls? She's like, I have a pair of barn owls, a male and a female. She's like, you're not going to hear them because obviously they're owls and they fly silent, but keep your eye because they hoot for a little while, and then about this time the sun fully breaks the horizon, if you're paying attention, they'll fly out. And so everything I was doing, I was eyeballing the fucking, like, that opening for the hay at the top. And Fox was with me and doing the same thing. And then all of a sudden we looked back up and dead fucking silent, these giant majestic barn owls just, like, fly out into the night to go hunting. And I look over and I see Fox's head is coming down from the same angle. And we were like, that was so cool. Like, and then we looked around and realized there's so many people around us and almost nobody else had seen it. It was like this beautiful magic, like, spiritual moment. Night 3, the people who actually made it to Malino, eating the deer dump truck killed, but like that feeling, doing the awards that night, that like true feeling of absolute jubilation, of holy shit, of all the people that started out were the ones who made it all the way through. Like, that feeling of accomplishment you could just feel through the whole camp.
It's really sad that MA will never know what that felt like.
Sorry, MA.
Hashtag that's what Malino looks like.
Seeing MA roll into Malino last year was one of the
huge.
most jubilant, heartfelt moments.
Let's take a step back.
Hold on. And then my last favorite memory from last year was all of us as a staff. So last year was the first year we ran with a full staff, and these beautiful gentlemen and Fox and such weren't just volunteering their time. They had been with us through the whole thing, and taking a moment at sunset to, like, really just be together and appreciate what we had accomplished for the weekend. Alex and Gabe just wandering up, which is immortalized in the Roseanne themed take and the video.
And Jess's Roseanne laugh at the end.
Exactly. And everybody just together watching the sunset, taking it in and appreciating it, like coming together, having everybody there. That's magic for me. So
yeah, the whole run is pretty magical. Let's do some quick fire.
Yeah.
4 or 5 words of things that fucking really kind of embody the high times at the run. I'm going to start it out. I'm going to say ass out burnouts. backflip pond jumps.
Yep.
Seth, you got any?
Man, I don't operate well under pressure, but all I can think of right now is I apologize, Adam, if I'm stealing this from you, but baptisms.
Baptisms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dirt track at Milano. Ian Kim will not stop until he's got a quick lap time. Love it. 10 barrel beer box head gaskets. Jesus. Camaraderie, community. Nobody gives a fuck what you're into or what you're up to.
Don't lend it to me if you don't want me to crash it.
Right? Yeah, totally. Jesus, 5 or 6 words is it's camaraderie. Well, and having high times like dope, weed, whatever, like helps. Yeah, but it's campfires and beer and it's motorcycles and it's camping and it's I don't know, to feel like we're recapturing something that went missing from the motorcycling community somewhere after the 70s, 80s, early 80s.
I feel like we're doing that. I really do. And bringing it back. On that note, we've hit our 1 hour mark. You guys ready for a little bit of a break?
Yeah, I could totally use a little nicotine here.
I gotta pee.
Right. We're going to step off, take a break, and we'll be back with you in just a moment. We'll move on from here. So we were talking about chess. We were talking about how that plays on riding motorcycles and how that affects our day-to-day lives. And I felt like we caught some good ground and a glimpse into what really any practice towards excellence and progression can really do for your life, regardless of whether it's playing a game or doing anything to excess, can really make your life a better place.
So, and I wanted to jump in just super quick and talk about how, like, Adam, our guest Adam, you got your endorsement in Illinois. Adam Smith. you got your endorsement here, but prior to having to go through the Team Oregon stuff, or
it wasn't a requirement when I took it, but I went through Team Oregon because.
So one of those things that I kept thinking about as Adam Aleksy was talking today was when you go to the Team Oregon training, one of the things that he talked to you about, which stuck with me, was this acronym SIPDE, SIPDE: scan, identify, predict, decide, and execute. And the chess talk of the next level, it's like next level SIPDE. Like you're looking at all of those situations that might impact your safety on the road and making your decision, and just having that layer of chess play and looking at it's like the next level of looking at things that might impact you. So I'm looking at level.
It's taking every single one of those steps, like just being way better at every single one of those steps.
So I'm looking at level 1 of everything that might impact my ride, and you're looking at level 2, level 3, maybe level 4.
Right. Depending on the situation. So and that's the idea, right? Like train yourself. You want to scan and recognize hazards on the road, but then there's the important hazards, like the imminent hazards, and then the less imminent hazards, and being able to identify that and focus on the most imminent. And then so that's the identification. Like, so scan, see everything.
Yeah, ride fast,
which is
don't die.
really fucking hard to see everything. Right. And then identify, but in that identification, if you can narrow down what's most important and needs most of your attention, decide well, what are my options? I can hit the brakes. I can swerve left. I can swerve right. Those are generally your only options. And then execute. But in that decision, you might realize, because of your scanning and you're identifying at another level, you realize, like, that person's pulling out of their driveway. It's short. They have made no eye contact. They have no idea I'm there. So the more creative response would be, instead of hitting my brakes, if I swerve right behind them because I know they're going to move forward with constant momentum, that's probably your best option, as opposed to trying to hit your brakes without locking them up, sliding, etc.
Had to lay her down, bro.
Yeah, so
Had to lay her down.
And that's the thing, like, and that's just something you can practice, just riding your bike all the time, as long as you're conscious of the fact that you should be practicing that. So, and chess has just made me a little bit more aware of what I should be, as I see those connections, like, oh, I should practice this or study this or pay attention to this, just like I do while I'm playing chess.
And that leans into mindfulness.
Exactly.
It goes beyond whether you're playing chess, riding a motorcycle, whatever it is that you do. If you're mindful about what you do, you get a lot more out of it, and you get to do it longer. Motorcycles, it's one of those hobbies that if you're not aware and mindful about what you're doing, it's a very temporary situation.
Absolutely.
You get taken out of it pretty quick.
It's inherently dangerous.
But it's the same thing too. Like, while building the bike, right? So I'm currently working on an Yamaha XS650 chopper project, hardtail, hand shift, etc. But it's the same thing. And, like, as I'm planning out each part, the more time I take to really think it through, plan out the design, how it's going to work down the road first. So that becomes most necessary, where that's going to be positioned. How do I reach that thing or whatever? How's it going to play into my ride down the road? So that now determines so much. And then after that, now we can make it pretty, as long as it fits within those definitions. Means that ideally, or should theoretically, once that bike's getting down the road, even though it looks good, but everything's still where I need it to be the most comfortable or logical or instinctual place for everything to be, so that I can also be riding it more safely down the road, right? So
yeah,
again, it's that mindfulness from the beginning. Like, it needs, like, obviously the end goal is for the whole thing to look really, really nice and look like badass or whatever, because I'm designing it and it's a chopper. But more importantly, everything needs to function, and I need to understand.
Beyond being a chopper, it's your chopper.
Well, and it's a bike.
The way that you view a motorcycle. It's the way that you are comfortable.
Yeah, and it's a bike
it.
first and foremost. So it's got to shift, it's got to stop, it's got to go, it's got to whatever. But using that extra mindfulness allows me to put everything in all these positions so that it just does what I needed to do when I needed to do it. Because, like Seth said, inevitably when it gets down the road, there is a level of inherent risk. And with no rear suspension and drum brakes and hand shift, I'm probably increasing that inherent danger. So not only do I have to be mindful in the design, but also mindful in how I ride it. And that was the whole point, is the whole bike is designed to slow me down anyways. That's what I was after. That I want this bike to take me back to 60, 65 miles an hour. I want to see cool shit coming up on the road with enough time to see it, recognize it, process it, make a decision. Do I want to stop there or not? And while still having the time at that point to stop if I want to, which is diametrically opposed to how I have been riding in Oregon more and more. As I've learned to ride better, we fucking blast most of the time.
That's what I was going to say. Is like,
and it's fun.
My bike designs have been mostly around acceleration. It's like, how fast can I get from point A to point B? What do I have to do to the bike to be able to make it handle well between point A and point B so that I can get there faster? And I feel like you've kind of gone the opposite direction with your chopper, where it's more of an expression of yourself that allows you to slow down and be part of the process more than part of the destination.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things of being, again, mindful. What are my favorite my most favorite times on the road, and my most favorite times on the road are pulled over to the side when somebody's addressing a small problem or needs a break, and we're just like literally dicking around on the shoulder of a road, shooting the shit, recognize, like being like, wow, that is the weirdest fucking secondhand shop I've ever seen, pulling in, walking around, meeting the kooky fucking owner who owns it. Or, you know, I want to get to that point where it's like, at this point I know so many roads in Oregon where I'm like, oh yeah, if you go here, 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 like you can get some fucking rip and twisties, and then go down here and catch Aleksy back and blah blah blah, and I can tell you how the road is. But in Illinois, I used to be able to tell you how the road is, but also like, oh, but if you're going to be on that road, stop here because they've got a stuffed cheeseburger that's fucking awesome and totally worth the stop. Or stop there and check that shop out. The guy who runs it's a fucking nutbag. And like,
if you're going to be
forward, it's like that's where I want to be, where I can not only tell you like what roads are great riding roads, but what are these weird little things most people don't discover. You know what I mean? Include people into that, and going too fast. I'm not discovering those things in Oregon the way I was discovering them in Illinois,
if
and
you
missed that part of the ride.
If you're going to be on that road, hang back a little bit because you're going to have to stop and pick up your buddy's fishtail exhaust.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
that brings us to the story of how I almost died last year. So, which was also in and of itself a really beautiful experience of revelation, because we were ripping the Aleksy Highway back. We had ripped it out. We were scouting Coos Bay and Yahat's properties on my birthday weekend, and we were ripping eastbound on the Aleksy Highway, which is a phenomenal road. And there's a series of banked switchback 20-mile-an-hour hairpins and up and down hills, and I got into a flow, and I was railing a fucking line, not cocaine, on my motorcycle on a highway, and in the Sennas, I hear Fox buzz in, gravel in the center of the lane.
Was
gravel.
he in front of you?
He was in front of me.
Yeah.
And we'd been seeing gravel on the center lines, and we'd been seeing gravel.
Fox, Adam, me.
Yeah. And we'd been seeing gravel on the center lines and gravel at the edge, but we had not seen gravel in our lanes. And all of a sudden, Fox beeps in, gravel in the lane, gravel in the center of the lane. And at that point, it was kind of like, I appreciated the heads up, and there was literally not a goddamn thing I could do about it other than let off the accelerator a little bit. And as I did, I hit, as I was crossing the lane to follow the line, when my rear tire hit the gravel, it let loose entirely, and it started like real short fishtailing, like wop, 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 behind me, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right.
And my butthole puckered watching him.
And my butthole puckered.
And my butthole's puckered hearing you guys hear this story.
Right.
Hearing you guys tell this story, unfortunately I wasn't able to go with you guys because of, other obligations. But yeah, whenever I hear this story, man, it makes me twitch.
So I'm probably doing, I mean, those lanes are tight, so I'm maybe doing 40 miles an hour.
It was to say 40, 45. It was
40, 45 in an area with worn downs down to 15
yards,
miles an hour.
Yeah, but I've got 20 yards to the end of the curve, which then drops off to a precipice of tree hill at, almost sheer drop off.
I mean, so for the listeners that don't know, I've ridden that highway. Those are 15, 20 mile an hour worn downs, and you're doing 40, 45, so you're doing double the recommended speed through those corners, just to kind of set the tone for the type.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from a logical standpoint, entirely irresponsible.
Not irresponsible.
Of riding for a long time.
I think
I had a line, and I was working my line, and I was, I was working off the seat, and I was working on way more advanced riding and cornering techniques. And so,
yeah, and I don't mean to say that you guys were irresponsible by doing more than the warning.
No, I mean technically it's irresponsible. The warning signs are there for a reason.
They are.
We had calculated that ahead of time.
There was nothing.
We were aware.
There was nothing about the ride that we were doing that was
dangerous.
Like everything, all things being equal, there was nothing about the way that we were riding that ride that was sketchy. The X factor was gravel in the middle of the road that we were not necessarily anticipating.
And what month were you doing this? This was May?
This is March. End of March.
Okay, March.
So we should have been expecting it, and we were expecting it on the way out, but because our lanes had been clear the entire way out, and now we were taking the same road back, we got lazy in our expectations and assumed the lanes back would also be clear.
Yeah, because we're on the opposite side of the road going in the opposite direction.
And I feel
Right.
like this happens a lot in Oregon. You go on a ride and you have an expectation because you've traveled those roads, but it's different. Like March, April, May. Those are totally different times of the year than riding July, August, September.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not like we weren't aware, but yeah, we gotten lazy in our expectations, and obviously always going faster than the speed limit or the worn down signs. You understand that you're taking a risk. They're there for a reason. The reasons are not always necessarily correct. I don't necessarily always believe in them, but we were working, but we also understood exactly what we were doing. Right. And so anyway, so I hit the gravel, 600-pound softtail, back starts doing a weird fishtail, like if you locked up your rear brake and it starts kicking left, it starts kicking right, and eventually you get to that point where it's like just kind of whipping back and forth real quick. And unfortunately with a softtail, I've locked up my rear brake many a times. It was not an unfamiliar feeling. So I immediately was off I was already letting off the throttle, hit it, lost control, immediately off the throttle, waited till the fishtailing slowed down enough that I was mostly in line,
off
rear
the
tire to
throttle
front.
and then off the brake later on.
No, so I was accelerating through, so I wasn't on the brake yet. Fox's warning came in. I let off the throttle mostly, hit the patch, lost control, let off the throttle entirely. As soon as my rear wheel stopped fishtailing enough that I knew it was going to be mostly, no matter where it was, in line with my front tire, I was as heavy on the front and rear brake as I could be without, again, locking it up. Dead straight, dead upright, maximum braking power. And I knew I had to the far white line. And then all I could do at that point was dump it as hard as I could into the next curve. And it would either follow through or it would low side off and I could bail. And the bike could go down the hill and I would be on the road, hopefully.
I've been in that situation. That's fucked. It's like your only way out is maximum lean angle and maximum traction.
Right. And so, and in the Senna, my brain's processing all of this. I'm doing all of this. And at first in the Senna, I went, this is bad. This is really bad. I think this is going to be really bad, guys. And I've got Seth and Fox in the Senna. And I'm panicking out loud, and I'm trying to let some of that emotion go verbally and not internalize it. And so as soon as I grabbed traction, super hard braking, I was going maybe max 5 miles an hour when I hit the far line. And I just full on dumped the bike over as hard as I could into a turn, knee out, everything I could to shift the bike that way. Still on the brakes and the bike, and then off the brakes slightly so the wheels could roll, and the bike literally like slow mo just rolled down the bank down into the next set of corners.
That's so fucking difficult.
And so
I mean, you mentioned that you got down to 5 miles an hour. And,
probably less. I felt like the bike was going to just fall over on the road.
Being a motorcycle rider, I can get where you're at. However, somebody who doesn't have an experience with motorcycles that has been driving a car, I don't know if they would grasp what that means. So on a motorcycle, heading into the apex of a corner and giving it all the brake that you can to be able to get to the point where you're safe and can exit the apex at 5 miles an hour can be a pretty huge feat. I don't know if anybody who drives a car can really kind of understand the difference between being on a motorcycle in that situation and being on a car in that situation.
Right, because in a car in that situation, if I go over the side of the road, there's enough trees that are going to take the whole length of the car, stop it on the side of the hill. I have the whole car wrapped around me, airbags, etc., to keep me safe.
Whereas with the motorcycle, you go between the trees
until
there's one that you can't avoid. and then you hit it and you're
Yeah,
fucking
so
just
my
dead.
idea was I'm going to brake as hard as I can, scrub enough speed, I'm going to turn, and if I have to, because I didn't do it properly or enough, or this is impossible, at least this way I can low side the motorcycle off the cliff and save myself. And then hope, but anyway, so I turned through it, and then obviously very skeptically take the next, I think it was like 1 or 2 corners to get out of that series to a straightaway. And in the moment, I was very happy to be safe and still down the road. But I also realized that that kind of experience in that moment. So I basically had this like really kind of rapid fire in my brain of, okay, I made it through. Okay, that was like, I'm so glad I made it through. Kind of thinking back on the moment, like, wow, like everything I have ever learned riding a motorcycle came to play,
To
and
the
I
moment.
executed properly, and I didn't, even though I was sounded panicky in the Senate, I never really panicked after that point. Like, okay, wow, like, and it was this like revelation of like all my experience came together in that moment and instinctually, and I did everything right, and I was like, wow, I like, not like patting myself on the back, but like, okay, like, I'm definitely a better rider, like like than I was when I moved to Oregon, et cetera, et cetera. And then I realized if I keep riding timidly, this will clog my entire rest of my ride. And we were still 4 hours from Portland that day on our route, Seth.
Yeah,
I
to
mean, we were
Coos
not
Bay.
close, anyways.
Yeah.
by any means.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, like I just have to accept that for what that was. It was a shitty situation. I reacted properly. I did not get into that situation because of my skills. I got entirely out of, or my decisions. I got entirely out of that situation because of my skills and my decisions. This does not reflect on me personally as a rider. And so I just hit the throttle and did everything I could to charge up and catch Fox.
And I
the
feel like
next set
that's
of
important.
turns.
So one of the things that they do when they rate tires is that they have a rating that's related on quote unquote the moment. And that moment that they're talking about is like the maximum compression of your suspension, where the tire is taking up the most possible damage that it can take up in that fucking possible moment. And I feel like that's kind of an expression of quote unquote the moment. Is
Right.
like that
And then if you live in that moment mentally, you're literally so afraid. You're either going to go really fucking slow, which is the proper response to do if you are afraid, or stop. But we had to get back that day, and I knew we had a lot of mileage to go. And so I basically did the equation in my head that I did nothing to cause the situation, but it was everything I did that prevented that situation from being bad. And so if I let this sit on my conscience, I will either be a dangerous rider or I will be a dangerous rider, because even if I go slow, I'm going to push myself past the point of fatigue before I ever get home, and I have to be home tonight, or, you know, whatever. So there was no way it wasn't going to make me dangerous to myself down the road. So I just ripped up to catch Fox on the straightaway, because obviously he slowed when he heard the panic in my voice to see if I came through all right. And then, so I caught up to him, and the very next corner, I laid my line, I adjusted my speed, I banged the motorcycle down. I have a very low dual exhaust on my bike. I have fishtails on them, which kick down a little bit more at the opening, which makes them even lower. And I just fucking ground through that fucking thing and got back in the groove.
And then through your fishtail.
Which I didn't know at the time. But then, a little bit down the road, we stop at Aleksy, and I'm looking for Seth, who had been in my rearview mirrors the whole time up until that accident, and then I was just concentrating on the road and not where Seth was. And so I went in, and I'm like, "Where's Seth? Where's Seth?" And I'm starting to panic again. Like, what I do? Freak him out? Did he get into an accident because I wanted him up? Blah 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 in my head. And Fox was like, "Dude, just go inside, take a piss like you have to, grab a soda. If he's not back out by the time you come back out, we'll just roll down the road and look for him, and we'll figure this out."
That's a tough spot. You know, I've been there myself, for sure, where you've got to worry about the person that's behind you on a ride. I also know that there's a lot going on there.
Yeah. So then I take my piss, I come back out, and Seth is walking into the general store we stopped at. Huge fucking relief. To which he announced that he had a present for me. We went outside, and my left fishtail end cap was sitting on my seat. And the reason it had taken him so long to get to Aleksy is because he watched it let go when I followed Fox through the next set of corners. Stopped, went back, grabbed it. It was so fucking hot because we'd been riding hard and had been grinding that he had to like hold it with his gloved hand and like couldn't like fully throttle brake, and so he limped his way back into Aleksy.
So for anybody out there considering a motorcycle purchase, Seth rides a Dyna, Adam rides a Softail. I'm not going to go much further into that.
I totally beat him to Aleksy.
You beat him to Aleksy
Because I had to stop and pick up your fishtail.
He had to stop and pick up your fucking parts along the way.
So yeah, that was his joke about losing fishtails, and that's the time.
No, and I got to tell you, it's like so. Adam Smith is making jokes about Adam rides a Softail, Seth rides a Dyna, but the fact is, in reality, Adam rides his Softail like it's a Dyna.
Adam rides his Softail hardcore.
Adam rides his Softail like it's a Honda CBR 1000 RR.
I've seen those sparks flying. I know what it's capable of. Adam, I also know that you have kids in a life outside of this podcast.
Yeah, I do have to get going, so I can say goodbye to my
yeah.
daughter before she goes for a sleepover. So.
Yeah, I know you got to roll on. I'd like to have you back for another episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So the plan is for me to stop back. This is the company deal, but as you know, your beautiful host Adam Smith has the helm of this thing. Think of me as like a regular guest. I'll be back in every 3 weeks or so. We'll do some more posting up, ask us questions. We'll get some more behind the scenes of how we actually put these events on, and check in new news coming up for the events and stuff as we have them to announce. And in the meantime, Adam will be profiling the beautiful individuals that make up our local Portland riding community that we love so much.
Looking forward to it. I mean, the podcast's an interesting perspective. It's given me the chance to kind of lean into some people that are in my life that I may not know as much about as I would like to. And it's given me the chance to really get to know some people that are in our community. And I really appreciate that. And Adam, I respect the fact that you got a lot going on, and I appreciate your time coming in today.
Well, thank you so much. It was so much fun to be here. I can't wait till the next time I get to come back. And to all of our RMTL family through both events that we have been able to meet over the years, I really, truly love you all, every last one of you. And I look forward to seeing you guys again this summer as we get back into the riding season, because it really is all about the community for me. As our books for the events would show, if you could see our bottom line, which is red.
Which is fucking dismal.
So red. But that's never, ever been the intent or any consideration when doing these events. So
exactly.
I love you all. I hope you enjoyed listening. If you did, feel free to donate to the Whiskey Fund, because it definitely makes the conversation flow more freely. But yeah, thank you
man,
guys
that
so
booze
much.
keeps the conversation flowing.
Shit, yeah, it does.
We
And
burned
if
through a fifth of whiskey at this point, close to it.
Love fifths.
You figure
How
out
many
the
drinks
math
was
on
that?
that.
A
It
piece?
might help you figure out that bet towards getting
There was
your
beer
free
involved.
RPR hat or whatever it is that
Yeah.
you get.
We'll figure something out. You get some nice swag. Also,
Yeah, we'll
if
definitely
you,
throw some merch at it.
If you are in the area or not even in the area, but you ride motorcycles, you're listening to our podcast, hit us up if you'd like to come here and talk to us about your riding experience and
Or
all
call
of the
in.
things that flesh you out as a human being that are not motorcycles. We would love to have you.
Yeah, I'd love to have anybody here who wants to chat. I think that, I cover a lot of ground during our breaks that I don't bring into the podcast, and that's been helpful. I got a lot going on. It's worth talking about.
Yep. And our female riders, we have so many beautiful, wonderful, amazing female gun runners that then also came out for RTTR. Please hit us up. We know it's a completely, every different form of background or whatever. We want all of those viewpoints. We want all of them. So, yeah, definitely our female riders, our minority riders, our whatever. Just, hit us up, guys. We want to talk to all of you. You're all beautiful, wonderful, special human beings in your own right outside of motorcycles, and you bring that to our motorcycle community. So,
Speaking of, I've got a Moto Bunny 666 on Instagram coming up for an interview pretty
nice.
soon. I've got several other people that are pretty entertaining. I think that we
Hail
got
Satan?
some good shit coming on.
Hail Satan.
Hail Satan.
Hail
Little Bunny 666.
What was
Hail
that t-shirt?
Satan!
What was that T-shirt that you made a while back, Adam? It was Ride Motorcycles, Hail Satan.
Oh yeah, like ride choppers, smoke weed, hail Satan.
That was it.
Something
Yeah.
like that, yeah.
I got that T-shirt. I got
Yeah,
the
yeah.
black on black version,
Yeah,
so I
dude.
can't read it. But it's
I love black on black T-shirts.
So-
That's a style that was in like 2002, 2003 when I was down in not Oregon. I don't want to out myself. but-
Bakersfield, California.
No, it was not Baker. It was San Diego. It's still California. Sorry,
Speaking of San
I'm a
Diego-
transplant. Fuck
So,
you.
we're all-
I love Oregon. This is
Seth-
my favorite place ever.
Speaking of San Diego, I'm heading to as soon as weather picks up, I'm going to Vegas and then Joshua Tree down by San Diego. So if anybody's interested in picking up on that ride, maybe doing a 1K in a day along the way, hit us up either through our Instagram or email or other way that you can get a hold of us through the podcast, and I'd be more than happy to maybe team up for a 1K in a day challenge badge.
And if you own a T-shirt company and you want to print me a black on black version of whatever you make, I'll wear it.
Black on black.
Adam,
Black on
thanks
black
again
on black
for,
on black on black.
Thank you,
Adam,
guys.
I know you're busy. You got life, you've got family, you've got all kinds of shit going on. Thanks for making the time to come in today.
Yeah,
Thank
love
you
your
guys.
face. Thank
And
you for
thanks-
being
appreciate
here.
it.
Yeah, and thank you guys for doing this for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that closes out this podcast.
All right, don't forget to comment on how many drinks you think we each had.
Too many. That's the number.
I
Quantify that.
I thought I
Quantify
was
too
gonna
many
cut
into
back.
a digital.
I did not cut back enough. Good night.